Right, Kerr, I figure we've got our presenters here. We should probably start moving. The way this is going to work tonight, just like every night so far, each presenter is going to speak for, I don't know, 5-10 minutes or so until they're done speaking, basically. And then we're going to open it up for questions. And we'll give anywhere from 10-20 minutes. We've gone quite long on some of the questions previously, and we'll, as long as it's pertinent, we'll let it keep going. As we get into the question portion, or the I should say the secondary portion, where we get input from everybody else here, please raise your hand. I'm going to be scrolling back and forth for the video, and we'll call each other out, so that way we're not all speaking over each other this entire time. Yeah, if for some odd reason you don't have a video going, it's hard for me to see your to raise your hand, but let us know anyway if you've got some input. In the meantime, if you are not speaking, please mute your microphone. It is super funny, everybody getting hot mic, but at the same time, when somebody's trying to present something they've worked on, it's nice to be able to give them their full attention. With that said, we've got Jake Zopes tonight. He is going to be giving us his piece on cross-training, and we've got Zack Hawes with core evaluation theory and self-efficacy, if I'm correct, or some versions of those. So without further ado, Jake, we got you up first. Sweet, man. We'll send it on over. Thank you guys very much. And thanks, Jake, for starting us off.
Sweet. Yeah, thanks, Adam. So I know most of the people here, but for those of you that I don't know or don't know myself, I'm Jake Zopes. I'm out of Steamboat, Colorado. And I got my RMT a couple years ago. I'm working on my path towards the examining staff. But like Adam said, I'm going to talk to you guys to the idea of cross-training, but not cross-training like we talked about last time, where it was a physical or a mental state of mind, but talking about a cross-training through different systems. And by that, I mean, the past 4 summers, I've been able to go down to New Zealand and spend some time down there doing training with other Kiwis, but also with people from around the world from different snowboard systems. And I believe it's been a huge help to myself in my own development, especially in that area of when I was going for Cert 3. It just kind of opened up my world to a lot of different ideas outside of the Cert 2 AASI robot. For couple outcomes or a couple things I want you guys to think about as we have this conversation, and is to think about some different systems that you guys have been involved in, whether it's USASA, free ride competitions, other systems, whether it's East Coast versus West Coast versus Rocky Mountain, all of those different systems within the AASI system. But maybe check out what you guys have done that's different than the current system that you guys are operating in your own resort. Couple ideas I want to start off with, things that perked up to me when I was training for my Cert 3, my first season down in New Zealand. The thing that kind of opened my mind to, okay, I have to like really understand my own system in order to understand this system, was something that Tony Macri talked about last session, which was the high performance stance of the New Zealand riders. Now, all of you can imagine or put ASI reference alignment, right? Stacked over your board. There's no separation going on. If you think about when you were doing your Cert 2 and getting up to that level, you're like, that is home, right? You want to be in that home. And then someone comes through and says, cool, that's a fun thing to do, but that's not what we're going to do anymore. We're going to do this high performance stance. And this high performance stance is a stance that's completely open. You're open towards towards the nose of your board. You have more flex in your back knee and ankle, which causes a little bit more aft pressure at times. And you're relatively in this stance, but it allows you to move from in a more high performance manner, so you can use some more joints, use some more balancing to help yourself be more effective in that higher level, higher tiered riding. I'm going to use Tony a couple times here, if that's okay with him, because he's got a lot of the knowledge on the NZ and the ASI system. Obviously, you know, Tony's been back and forth quite a few times, and he's involved with both of the committees, both Northern and Southern Hemisphere. But I'm gonna toss it over to Tony real quick, if that's okay with you, Tony. You know, good. I just want to hear a couple of the key things that you also see that can perk up someone's comparison between the AASI system and the NZ system, if that's cool.
Yeah, sure. I'll start out by just a little bit of background. I've been going down to New Zealand since '98. And in my first couple of years there, I was a training manager at Whakapapa, which is on the North Island of New Zealand. And when I was there, similar to what you had, Jake, is we had a melting pot of instructors from all over the world, some different associations. And it was interesting how many arguments were being had about like, this system is better, that system is better, this system is better. And people are arguing about apples and oranges, things that they don't know know the difference about, or that are completely different for their own regard. And I think the biggest thing that you'll see when you go to something like Interski is a great arena where people show about what their systems are doing. And I've been fortunate enough to go there as a member of the New Zealand national team and the US. And when you go there, you see that people do things for a reason. And for example, in New Zealand, you know, our snow texture is really firm. We don't get much powder. We don't get many bumps down there. You know, things like that. There's no trees to speak of, obviously. So because of that, there's a different style of riding, and there's things that you need to be aware of, like flat light and things like that. Obviously, we have some of those things in this country here, not necessarily as much in the Rocky Mountain region, but on the East Coast and West Coast and stuff like that. So some of the things that you'll see is how we adapt to be able to ride those snow conditions, and also how we adapt to be able to teach the different types of people we get. We get a lot of Aussies in New Zealand, and Aussies are kind of go-getters. You know, they don't want all the fluff. They want to get right to it, and they want to be challenged, and they want value. Where a lot of times when you teach a lesson here, especially those of you guys that teach at the upper markety places, the Vales, the Beaver Creeks, the Aspens, where you're not necessarily teaching, but you're guiding and keeping them safe, and getting a fat tip at the end, and eating a lot of long lunch and having some après with them. That's not a thing in New Zealand for anybody that's taught in New Zealand. So there's the different teaching stuff. There's the different riding stuff. And the thing that I'm most proud of is how much has been incorporated in the New Zealand system from the AASI system. For example, the New Zealand system, the main teaching cycle is play, drill, adventure, summary. They took that straight out of the American system on the kids side of things, and they saw that was useful for teaching all students. Another thing that we took, SBI and Z took from ASI, was the ATML. Down there we call it ATTL, which is great because to me, no offense, Hargrave, it's not about a maneuver, it's about a trick. So we were able to change that a little bit. But yeah, so taking some things, sharing ideas. So I think the beauty of working in different systems is, one, understanding it. The more you understand it, the more you can see the similarities, and more you can change and tweak things to make things better. There are some cool things down there that we can do that are a lot more difficult in the ASI system, because it's a smaller group, and it's a group that's more nationally focused. Where here we are a much larger group, and we have, obviously 8 different divisions. Everyone's speaking a slightly different process, even though we're trying to get more into alignment lately. But things move way slower here and way faster there. So it's been awesome for me to be able to go down there and beta test things in that system, and then to bring them back here. For example, when we did the rewrite on the freestyle manual, we put the 3 C's in there. That was set up years ago. I kind of stole that from a guy named Michael Blanton from Telluride, and he got it from climbing. And we took that from climbing and kind of introduced it into snowboarding. And then from there, we started using it in the SBI and Z system. It worked so well that we put it in the system over here. So just some little things, but even though the language and the terminology might be slightly different, it's pretty much the same thing for the most part. it's one last note on that. What I found is that the more you open up your awareness and your ability to kind of take on new information and play with things and to be okay with not saying, well, we do it this way. Well, we do it. Stop starting, I guess, discussions where like, this is how we do it versus be like, how do you guys do it? And why do you do it that way? The more we started doing that, the more things really started to grow. And for myself personally, I grew a lot going down there as an examiner and taking my full cert rather than just going straight into becoming an examiner. Took my full cert, did the trainers and stuff down there, and got involved with the system that way, which was really cool. Kind of get back on that assessment block.
Sweet. Thanks, Tony. I appreciate that insight. So I'm going to kind of jump off from where Tony was talking about. And I think a huge thing is that, yeah, don't come at it with, well, we do it this way, your way is wrong. Because that's where I started when I first went down to New Zealand. I was like, this high performance thing doesn't work. But as soon as I opened myself up to, all right, why does it work here? How does it work? I felt like it gave me an idea to come back to the AASI system and go for my 3 that season and be like, oh, I'm going to separate at this time because this is where it adds this pressure here. So I want you guys to think about some instances where you've done some cross training between different systems, or you've even just riding with another rider. When you watch someone out there shredding around, you're like, it doesn't look like it should work that day. You know, you watch some, park guys out there, you watch them approach a rail and you're like, there's no way that they're going to survive that rail. And then they throw this crazy back lip onto it and it is completely fine. Start thinking about those things that maybe you've seen in the past and you've had to maybe struggle with or build upon. And I would love for you guys to start sharing maybe a few of those instances where you came at it at first as, hey, this wasn't what I expected it to be. I don't think it should work. And then you actually got yourself built up to start integrating it maybe into your own writing or even your own teaching. So Adam, I don't know if anyone's volunteering up for that, but I'll let you kind of.
Yeah, I'll start it off. Inclination versus angulation is something I actually took from the snowboard world and put right into the downhill mountain biking world. The tip of the bike before the lean of the body, trying to get the performance out of the bike without putting my center mass too far inside the turn to continue to create pressure or traction on my tires. And it really kind of blew my mind when I finally was like, wait, I've been doing this for how many years? And I'm now just putting these two things together. And it dramatically changed the way I rode and then the way I taught downhill mountain biking as well. I'm sure there's a few others. We got anybody else out there with, we got Zack. Zack, go for it, dude.
There we go. So I got a chance to take the level 3 down in Australia through the APSI system, which was really interesting. Because they focus on very different movement patterns there. And the up on weight, the most extended edge change is a very, very big thing there. And when I went down there and I went through that process, I just finished up my level 2 when we started introducing the most flexed initiation instead of the down on weight. So for me, it really threw me for a loop that their definition of high performance was based off of this particular movement pattern. But at the same time, just changing up the movement pattern, seeing how they applied that kind of stuff helped me a lot with honing in my mastery of my body movements. So in that application, it was super useful.
Nice. Do we have anybody else up? Chris.
Yes, so just in terms of cross-relating sports, one of my favorites is skating. And I think the activation of the ankles is such a critical thing in skateboarding that most people don't understand that it's a primary source of balance. You know, it looks like it's a lot of the upper body and angulation, things like that, but ankles are critically important in skateboarding. And, you know, a lot of times when I'm working with my athletes or just my students, I like to talk to them about what it would feel like to not have bindings or boots to support you. So how does a skateboard surfer maintain contact with the whole foot on the board? And And it's that connection of being able to flex the ankles with the other joints that makes the difference. And I think in snowboarding, you sort of lose touch with that because of the mechanical nature of the boots and the bindings, all that leverage and support. Whereas in skating, you really get to feel it. You get to feel the effect and the impact of, you know, bending your ankles and how that impacts balance. So just an interesting thought.
We got Mike. What's going on, Mr. McKellar?
Hey, I just
Mr.
want to jump in off the Hargrave on that one. I think skating is the biggest tool out there. You can find out who is committed to what they do by standing on a skateboard. How many of you out there have stood on a skateboard and not fallen off your very first try? Yeah, it's one of those things that you soon know if skating is for you or if it's not for you, because the consequences are super high. And there's no tech manual out there to read through and say, this is how I should skateboard. You know, you stand on it, you give it a go, and then you see what happens next. So I'd encourage you guys to get on it, figure out your stance, and it will soon teach you a lot of things about how you stand on a plank of wood. You know, the pros and cons of where you stand on it. You don't have to read a manual. It's all there for you to discover. Play around with it, you know. Take it back to the old school days of a little tic-tacking. Get that board moving without you pushing it is a huge benefit to understand, like how your body stands on a board, what your posture should look like, how your body separates from rotation to counter rotation to get this thing moving. And it's super easy. You can just do it outside on your patio, in your garage, wherever. And I'm sure you'll soon find out what your best stance would be on your snowboard.
I dig it. Lawrence.
So just to piggyback off of what you guys said, bringing it right into snow skating too, it's like the perfect blend of both of those things. That's snow skating, something I've been really into for the past year or so. And I used it a lot down in New Zealand this past summer. Me and a buddy of mine were really big on like taking people off snowboards and putting them on a snow skate, just so they could feel the difference, like how much you can actually use your ankles when you're not what I call like being lazy and kind of leveraging yourself against your bindings, and using, you know, those fine motor movements to help you out a lot more. And especially with people that have skateboarded before, it's a really easy way to get them more in tune with being on snow, because it's kind of, like I said, it's blending those two worlds, and to become this one thing where, you know, that whole cross training thing, it's perfect for it. So I really do think snow skating is a great way to bring it back into snowboarding as well. Help get people to focus on their ankles a little bit more, and you know, realize that, you know, it's not all about using your body and like leaning fully into the turns. You can get a lot more performance out of those finer motor movements.
Nice. Tony, you got a piece?
Yeah, I just want to kind of bring it back to Jake's point, because Jake did make a point, like we weren't talking about sport to sport, but we're talking about like association all over the world. And something that when I went to New Zealand, I remember having the conversation and the argument about this quite a while, was the idea of every turn you make on a snowboard goes in the sequence of edge pressure steers, what is the claim that SBI and Z is making. And that was a great argument. And I sat, man, for days and weeks and seasons trying to debunk that. And it's really interesting, you know, because we always have the conversation of where does the initiation of the turn actually start? Is it when the edge engages, or is it when you start to move from the old edge to the new edge? And just that conversation, like, you know, and I totally buy into the edge pressure steer thing at this point, by the way, but the idea of them kind of bringing that to my attention and me being that, like, you know, no, I'm firm AASI believer. And, you know, I bet we can find a way to kind of break that myth or that idea. And then, and that just made me go out and try to prove it wrong. And by me trying to prove it wrong, created a lot of learning opportunities and learning moments for myself and those that were with me that were kind of working on it as well. So I think, you know, when you go to another association, like Zach was talking about, the whole APSI and the fact that they go crazy up and down and stuff, you know, you go down there and you're like, I'm going to try to ride this snow and go all retraction and get all, you know, down on weight. And then all of a sudden you hit a patch of ice and you smash your face against the ground and you realize that's probably not the best option. But I think that's what it's all about, is about taking these ideas and concepts from these associations and seeing if you can prove them right or prove them wrong. And at the end of the day, generally you come around and you're like, okay, this is a good idea for a reason.
Nice. Thanks, Tony. Anybody else got a bit on system to system, or take it back to Jake? Thanks, Jake.
Sweet. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that back, Tony. I appreciate that. I want to throw a couple other things that are going on down in the New Zealand system at you. So we work in the world of TID, right? Timing, intensity, duration. Down in New Zealand, they play with it a little differently. Instead of TID, it's power, range, and timing. And their timing piece is split up into duration and like sequence, like when it's happening. So have a second to kind of chew on that, just knowing like, all right, power can kind of be our intensity, but then our timing is our when, which is their sequence, and our duration is our duration, just like theirs. But they have that little extra bit of range. And how many times are we out there talking to a student and scaling things and being like, hey, we're working from 5 to 6, and now we're going to try to go 4 to 7, and how important it is in our instruction. I just thought it was really interesting that they brought that in, like that's their TID. They have that already ingrained into like the level 1, the level 2, level 3. Whereas I think it's something that we develop as instructors here in the AASI system once we've teaching maybe at that level 2 or that level 3. Another piece, just maybe a show of hands, who got a chance to kind of read through the little post that Tony put up with some of the SBI and Z chapters? Did anybody get a chance to look at any of those as we went through? So some people got to go check out the different stances. Let's see, David Orlando, you said you got a chance to check it out. Do you mind talking about some of the things you thought about those 3 stances, or what you felt like happened, or how you agree or disagree with what you saw there?
You're still muted, Dave. See if we can't help him out real quick. Nope. Did Dave disappear?
Where's he at?
I think he may have disappeared.
He's gone.
That happens. He liked the stances so much, he went to go work on them right now.
Awesome.
Did anybody else get a look at that? At those 3 stances?
No.
I'm not seeing anybody else's hands.
Okay, no worries. Just thought I'd toss that out there. Did anybody got anything more? Oh, Tony's hand up. No on Tony. Okay, cool. So one last little piece I'll toss out, and Tony kind of mentioned it, is the edge pressure steer model that they talk about. And this is a sequence that New Zealand talks is Conrad had. Oh, all right, Conrad. There we go. Yes, let's do it.
Wait, are we? Yeah, we're unmuted, I think. Yeah. Sweet. So I just want to talk about it a little bit, and you brought this up earlier, just, you know, trying to throw me in there about freeride competition stuff. Yeah, so I get to see like a lot of different people compete, and they ride very differently, and a lot of them will have different riding styles because they came from, some division or another in different countries. And it seems like a lot of instructors, once they get to a higher level, kind of fancy themselves in that category of competition. So because we know how to turn our equipment and whatnot. So it's pretty interesting seeing the different associations way of high performance riding in those kind of like technical or more consequential environments, and kind of how that shows itself. It's a lot of riders will have the ability to manage a lot of different situations in front of them. It's just the way that they do that is different. Like kind of to Zach's point, those like more like APSI people will be like really aggressive with their movements. They're up and down. You can even see this coming like in French and Austrian riders. Sometimes they can be like super aggressive with that most extended edge change. If you guys have ever watched like Xavier Delarue ride, and he's not like an instructor or anything, but that's kind of like the I don't know, kind of ethos that goes behind those sort of riders of really exaggerated, most extended edge change. And then you see people kind of more from the NZ system or the AASI system or the system here. And there's going to be a lot more of that most flexed edge change, a lot more retraction movements where it's kind of appropriate. So that was my piece. Yeah.
We've got Tony with his hands up, but before that, Dave, you figure out how to get off mute?
Yeah, my computer was slowly dying. I like just a little piece here is just looking at the breakdown of the proactive versus reactive stance, and just kind of, as you guys were talking about before, riding sort of with that openness and focusing a lot on how that is anticipatory movements there. I just thought it was really cool to like kind of see how they capture that and how they talk about it being proactive versus reactive, which I just think even in that language there, it's a little more, it makes a little bit more sense even at a very fundamental level than anticipatory, because sometimes anticipatory gets my mind kind of going all over the place, whereas proactive versus reactive was, I really like that language there.
Yeah, it's
Nice.
awesome.
Keep going, Jake.
No, I appreciate that, Dave. That's that's the big thing I was trying to like draw from, right? Is seeing how the language of different systems, or even the visual of different systems, can make you really take a step back and be like, okay, do I really understand why we do it this way, or do I just do it this way because there's a task chart that says I'm a level 3 and I should be riding with retraction all the time? So it's like, and it feels super, Tony's stoked, but I'll admit I was definitely going into my Cert 3. Like if I hadn't had New Zealand, I would have ridden small radius, close, retracted turns down bump runs forever. And having that experience is so massive to change someone's perception or someone's riding. So like this is something that I want to push out to those of you that are either going for your 3 or going for your RMT or E1 or whatever it is. Go take a look at a different system to like get that chance to be like, okay, do I understand it, or do I do it because they told me that this is the thing that my level does?
Totally.
We got Tony with his hand up again. Thanks for being patient.
So I just wanted to add one thing, is that if you guys want an example of something that was brought from, say, like another system into the ASI system, there's a good example of that. Again, in the freestyle manual, there's an element in there about coach approach. And coach approach teaching in New Zealand is a big piece of the level 3 and the trainer cert. And there's just a small segment of that in the freestyle manual. So you can have a little look at that. But that's an example of what we do in New Zealand, and we're as a way of kind of coming back and forth from system to system.
Nice. Anybody else? throw it back to Jake.
Sweet. Thanks for being a part of that, guys. I just wanted to toss that out there because I know we have a pretty diverse crew, whether it's across the nation or different certification levels or whatever it may be. But my biggest thing, like I just said, is I just want you guys to get out there and like ask a few more questions about what you're training towards. Don't just take it as like, cool, I'm going to get my level 3 this or my level 2 that or my whatever it is. Challenge it, put it on its head, especially those of you that are going for RMT. When I went and rode for my RMT after having a couple seasons in New Zealand, I went out to just go ride weird stuff, like do it wrong, do it against the grain, do it whatever it is. And the thing that can help you is maybe looking at different systems for that reason, right? Cassie does a lot of upper body rotation. Can you ride all day long rotating that upper body, whatever it is? But challenge yourself to do something different, put yourself in a place where you have to have the knowledge to back it up and be like, that didn't work because of this thing, or that did work because of that thing. But thank you guys again. And I'll hand it over to Zach. I think he's got it next.
Thanks, Jake. That was really cool. It's really weird talking with everybody else muted. I feel very powerful. Hold on one second. I want to see if the screen share thing works. I want to, there we go. Okay. So I'm going to do my best to explain this thing that I stumbled upon. Can everybody see it? Give me a thumbs up, maybe, if you can see what I'm looking at here. So I was at a training day where Tony decided to come out and help us out with some of our RMT prep stuff. And he gave me an impromptu clinic. And my impromptu clinic topic was on self-efficacy. And I immediately had like a panic attack and ran to the chairlift by myself, grabbed my phone as fast as I possibly could, looked it up because I don't remember reading about this at all, which I'm not used to because I read a lot. And I just had like a miniature heart attack because my phone wasn't working and I was freaking out. It didn't go well. I ended up giving a clinic the best to my ability and just bullshitting the entire thing. But, you know, sometimes that happens. That's okay. So what I do when I'm thrown out of my comfort zone is I kind of dissect exactly what happened, and then I completely just go overkill on everything. So I found out what self-efficacy is. And first, I think it's really useful to understand what that is and why it's important. So self-efficacy is the belief in somebody's ability to do something. And I created this little chart here. It's kind of a flow chart. I'll just explain that really quick. So there's a pre-event, an event, a post-event. What happens before you do something is you believe that you can do it, or you don't believe that you can do it. It's kind of one or the other. You might believe you can kind of do it, and there's 4 things that help us in our belief in our ability to do something. There's mastery experiences. We've done it before. There's social modeling. So that's when your friend goes and backside 50-50s rail, and they're of the same kind of ability level. So you go and do the same thing. Social persuasion is when you have a bunch of people screaming at you like, send it, and then you send it, and you're stoked, and you stick it, and you're all good. And states of physiology is kind of your emotional state and your physiological state, and those 2 things are combined. So if you have a fused ankle, that's going to affect your range of motion. If your dog died that morning, you're not going to be in a good headspace. You're going to be thinking about other things that's going to affect your belief and your ability to do something. So all of these things tie in to what you're about to do. If, let's just take like a very classic example straight from the level 3 exam, like a 360 on a jump. A lot of people get in a weird headspace for this task, like 360s in general. Maybe they don't practice, who knows? Maybe they're lacking one of these 4 components of self-efficacy, and then they do it. So that's self-efficacy in a nutshell. They either do it or they don't do it. If they don't do it, and this is where it gets interesting to me, you go down one of these 3 paths. So there's this psychologist who developed this thing called core self-evaluation. And it's a way to, I'll just show you guys so you can read along, but it's a way to develop, or it was developed to measure job performance and job satisfaction. and it's measured within key personality traits. If you've studied psychology, there's 5 key personality traits, so it kind of hits on some of those. This is really cool because I feel like AASI does a really good job of setting people up for success, starting from a base level. I think that we could improve on people starting from below a base level, maybe starting from a frustrated level. People that have failed exams multiple times. Like I've been exposed to more examiners now, like in the last couple of years, and they've been sharing their experiences with me about how they've had frustrating experiences with certain candidates, and how these people go and go and go, and they don't get it, and they don't get it, and they don't get it. And it just, like, for me, not being an examiner, that just seems like the most mind-melding process, like the most frustrating thing ever. People continuously going for something and not having the tools to achieve whatever they want to achieve. So preemptively, like, I'm on this pathway toward RMT. I'm trying to put myself around people that are having very hard times with training. And that's what led me to this. So I know that was a lot of talking. I don't really like talking, which is why I'm talking fast. So self-esteem, neuroticism, and locus of control. Let me briefly explain these things. So you don't land the 360. We're in post-event. You go to one of these 3 branches. You have a self-esteem branch. So this will affect your confidence in your own worth or your abilities. It might affect your own self-respect if you tie snowboarding to a large part of your ego. Neuroticism, and that's a tendency toward emotional instability. Like people that are very reactive to stress will go toward negative emotions. If you don't land a 360, you're going to be, this is horrible. This is the worst thing that's ever happened to me. I'm in the middle of exam. Tony Macri just saw me fall. Oh, this is so embarrassing. This is the worst thing that's ever happened. I'm going to fail. And that puts you on your locus of control. So locus of control is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces, have control over the outcomes of the events in their lives. So I'm sure you guys have heard it before, but like level 2 candidates complaining about the freestyle standard. So they'll complain and say something to the regards of like, the freestyle standard is ridiculous. Like the skiers, they don't have to do this stuff. They don't have to do a 360. They don't have to do a rail. They don't have to do a 180. They don't have to do any of this stuff. Why do we have to do it? It's all fault of whoever is in charge of the freestyle standards. As opposed to like, this is my fault. Like I am in control of doing this. I need to put myself on a pathway where I can do it. That would be an internal locus of control. And I had to look up what the word locus means, but it's from Greek. It's derived off of location. It's just the location of where you put control. That's kind of what goes into it. So within the flow chart, just bringing it back to this, you have a pre-event, an event, and a post-event. You have the locus of control, neuroticism, and self-esteem. If you are low on the core self-evaluation theory, you will have lower self-esteem, high neuroticism, and a tendency toward external locus of control. If you are high on your core self-evaluation score, you're going to be high in locus of control, like internal locus of control, low in neuroticism, and high self-esteem. And the thing that I'm really getting to, and I'd like to hear some other people talk about this, is how do we modify these 3 things at the bottom, self-esteem, neuroticism, and locus of control, in order to create better self-efficacy for our exam candidates and our trainees and our students. I've come up with a couple of things just down here, and if anybody wants this, I feel totally free to send it to you afterwards. But I'll just leave that there. I think it's probably more beneficial just to hear where other people are at, what they think of this. What I just scrolled down to is my solutions, like very brief solutions for how to modify behavior in these people. And these are all based off of psychological articles and technical articles that I've read. A lot of it involves mindfulness, identifying the issue, where we put our own self-esteem, etc. But that's pretty much all I got. I just wanted to present this and see how people felt about it.
Nice. To get so far, hands, anybody have any input on this?
I'm having difficulty seeing people.
Adam,
Oh, yeah,
I'll give it a go.
Sweet. Thanks, Mike.
Question for everybody. How's everybody doing with this COVID-19? Is it a struggle or is it a cakewalk? Seems like everybody's having a bit of a struggle with it, right? And I think it comes down to change. We do not like change. We always fight change. We always want to be comfortable. We always want to kind of like take the easy path. But if you want to get something out of life, you gotta embrace change. And I think this is a good bit of information out there that embracing a question that somebody fumbled and then made them think about why they fumbled the ball on it, and then came up with this great flow chart to spur on this conversation. It all came out of that one little thing and that is he was challenged to something that he didn't quite understand. So I think the biggest thing for us as educators is that sometimes we think we know everything, and we don't humble ourselves and listen to those around us and say, hey, why do you have that opinion on that particular subject? And how do I embrace that change? Do I have to fight it, or can I embrace it and say, what do I learn from the situation? And then how can I challenge other people to keep learning? Kind of going back to the first topic with regards to learning out of different systems. You know, everybody has a different way of thinking, and it's derived out of their situations, and it kind of going from there. So it also comes down to basically going to another country and just learning by their rules. Like, they have a whole different set of rules for us to live by. We have to embrace that change. It might not be easy, but once we do, we can kind of understand and how we can kind of filter into that program and get the most out of it. So I really like that presentation. That was amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I think something that would probably be useful if anybody feels like sharing a time where they got really frustrated, whether you're in the park learning a new trick, or you were in an exam and you failed, or failed an aspect of that exam. And who's that? Yeah, Adam? No, sorry. Can't see your name in this video view. I don't know how to modify anything.
Are you looking for me, Zach?
Yes, Jake.
Cool. I can totally speak to your exact feeling and situation that you talked about. Again, Macri in front of us. This was for regional team tryouts. I got hit with explaining the fundamentals of teaching. I had to lead a clinic on this, and just to let you in on a little bit of the background of what the season up to regional tryouts for me was, it was devoid of anything AASI written material. It was all about me trying to figure out what I need to do as a trainer. So I completely missed the learning connection model that season, just like gone. So I didn't even know that I was already off. I went up the chairlift. I went up the Pally chair at A Basin. Came up with this awesome clinic about the fundamentals of like teaching, like how we teach them. And, you know, I'm thinking like reference alignments and board performances and all these things. I go out there, and then I get 30 seconds into my presentation, and Chris and Tony are like, whoa, that's not what we're talking about. Actually, we're talking about this. And I completely froze. And I definitely went through the self-efficacy process after that, trying to take a point of like, okay, I took some feedback from this side about my RMT. Okay, don't go read blah, blah, blah. But I took it maybe too far, and I need to go and still look at like, oh, I still need to be involved in this situation. If I'm going to go be towards national team or a regional member, I still need to know what's going on in the books, but I don't need that to be everything that I lead and teach. So for me, I talk about myself where I always try to take my locus of control and make it as internal as I can. Because if we start focusing on all the outside stuff, it seems like more excuses. So personally, I try to like bring it on. Okay, I haven't done the right thing this time. I need to do something different next time. Let's see, what was it? Neuroticism. I would hope I'm not super emotionally unstable, but I feel like that's for other people to determine. And then the self-esteem, I crashed pretty hard after that presentation. It was a little rough. I'm definitely one of those people that puts a lot of my status in my snowboarding, because I try to do it year round. So it's a lot of who I am. But bounced back from it pretty okay for the season. Just learned that got to take feedback and put them in different places. So I can definitely relate to you on where you went to for that RMT prep.
Cool. Yeah, I think we all without really, like, we've all heard it before. That's the thing about this, is like we've heard it but deconstructed in kind of different ways. So Andrew, you have something to say?
Hey guys, I was actually focusing on the locus of control, and one thing that I think is important is while I think it is beneficial for us to aim to put that locus of control internally, but realize that, you know, we live in a world where we can't control everything, and there are times that the outcome may have been affected by external things, external influences. But if we understand that it is an external influence and we can't control it, then we shouldn't focus our energy towards it. So I think it's realizing that, yes, we want to do as much as we can to build yourself to a successful outcome, and realize that, you know, sometimes things do get out of our control. And when that happens, like, don't get so focused on blaming it, but just realize that is the world we live in, and to continue focusing on that internal motivation.
For sure. Yeah, the locus of control is interesting because sometimes the external force is extremely valid, like COVID. We weren't really in control of it. It's here. Yeah, sometimes, like, you go to, sorry, I'm plugging in my computer right now. Sometimes you go to, like, hit a box, do a board slide, and the box is extremely sticky. And maybe you could have checked it and you can do internal things, but like if you got one shot for a board slide on a certain box and it's super sticky, sometimes you can't really do too much about that. Anybody else want to add anything?
Chris Hargrave has had his hand up for a hot minute.
Yeah, please.
I was just, first, Zach, really cool presentation, man. Thank you for sharing this. And then just thought I would share a moment of failure here. Just not a week and a half before the whole world shut down, I was traveling. I traveled a ton this season. It was kind of crazy, busier than when I was on the national team. But I was up at Snoqualmie Pass and gave a clinic. And I had 2 clinics in one night, and it was just like a whirlwind kind of thing. And I drove in and kind of got into it. And the second group was a group of level 2 and 3 aspirant. They were aspiring to take their level 2 and 3 exams. And I got out there and just got on this mission of like presenting a whole bunch of ideas that I thought were really important. And I don't know, an hour or so in, I finally realized that it just wasn't connecting with anybody in the group. And I had this moment of like almost dismay where I'm like, oh shit, I'm totally doing that. It was like any examiner in this meeting can relate to like a bad level 2 or 3 presentation where you get someone running down the road of a whole bunch of different ideas, and it's going to connect if they have enough time to connect it, but they never do. I found myself in that situation. I'm like, I stopped myself at the bottom of a run and pulled the group in, and I just said, have you guys ever totally blown it with a group where you're just presenting a bunch of really great ideas that, you know, really stroke your own ego, but aren't even closely, you know, connecting or resonating with the people in your group? And I And I just had this moment where I got really humble, and my self-esteem, actually, I was reflecting on self-esteem. It dropped for a second. I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm supposed to be good at this. Like, I travel all over and do this. People tell me that I'm good at this, but I am blowing it right now. And I just humbled up, and I told the group, I'm like, yeah, I'm blowing it. And my mistake was, I didn't put my attention on them, what they needed, where they wanted to go, what was important to them. And I reset, after an hour. Thankfully I had another hour and a half to go in the clinic, but I reset, and I made it all about them in the moment, and started reconnecting with them, and found a new momentum, and finished really strong. But it was just really cool to notice my own neuroticism and self-esteem issues in that one experience. And thinking about the locus of control, certainly there were factors that were at play that I wasn't in control of, and I should have recognized more effectively. A big one, just not really having a long-lasting or long-standing relationship with those people, but and not knowing them very well. But certainly they had things going on. Some were tired. They worked all day. All these kinds of different things were going on in that mix that I couldn't control. But the one thing that I could control for sure internally was my ability to connect with them and make it about building a relationship and becoming a stronger part of their experience, just on a one-to-one, on a individual basis with each one of them. And man, what a crazy process to go through. And just, it's, I don't know what level everyone in this group is, but man, I can tell you that those moments where you get humbled in front of your peers, or on any front, they can be so educational and so powerful. But you have to be humble enough to actually accept the fact that you're not what you maybe thought you were in that moment. Like a total badass legend guy traveling in from someplace. It's all bullshit, right? The one thing I always tell people, that PSI and AASI, they never mess up one thing. When they created an opportunity for people like this group to come together and connect, you can't mess that up. You can't mess that up. No matter how big the organization is, no matter how slow it moves, no matter how many new acronyms we have. And thank you. Now there's a bunch of new acronyms that I'm chewing on in my brain from these 2 sessions. But, no matter what we do, as long as you bring people together that are passionate about things, you're going to find some pretty amazing outcomes. And I really love that about this organization. And, big shout out to the whole group just for putting this together. And I really appreciate the opportunity to sit in on these, humbling to listen to the level of knowledge and development that you guys have in your peer group. So anyways, thank you. Great job, Zach.
So
we got Lynn with their hand up.
Please.
Hey guys. So thumbs up. Have you guys studied the social comparison theory at all? So basically, social comparison is one of the ways that people gain insight into their own competence. They compare themselves to other people who are basically at their level. So I was wondering, do you think the locus of control can be both internal and external? The reason I'm asking that is, in the known unknown part of Johari's window, you know that you know a lot, and you're confident in what you know, and your self-efficacy is high in what you know. But then you also know that there's a ton of things you don't know, which makes your self-efficacy a little bit lower. And then that's external. So what do you think about how social comparison relates to the core self model, Zach?
Cool. I want to go back to the definition. So the definition for locus of control is the degree to which people believe that they, as opposed to external forces, have control over outcomes of events in their lives. And I for sure believe that the degree is the biggest word there. Like 50% board, 50% body, 10% board, 90% body. Like I can do a back one every single time. But if you put me on like a Palmer from the 90s and the base like has hair on the bottom of it, and you want me to do that over a medium jump, I don't know how well that's going to go. And I think the locus of control definitely shifts depending on what you are doing. And in relationship to that theory, I would say that it's definitely blended for sure. And the other thing that made me think about is like self-efficacy and sorry, you called it social comparison? What was it called? Yeah, cool. So the social comparison, there's different degrees of like, this is all very blended. And I think just like you see different models kind of spill on top of each other in AASI, whether it's like the CAT model and VAK and whatever, like you can definitely apply this to that. And I'm sure if you look at the psychologists, you'll probably see some blending over there. The guy that came up with most of this stuff, we can see down here on my sources list, but Judge was a big one, Locke, Durham, Albert Bandura, he was the guy for self-efficacy. And the more I got into that kind of thought process, the more I saw so much bleed over in all of these processes. What I think would be interesting is to see what's the definitive difference between what you just said and locus of control, because I don't think I have that answer.
I don't know if there is a huge definitive difference. I think you're right. They blend right into each other. I'm just reading the definition again.
What was the definition? Yeah.
Of the locus of control or of social
No,
comparison?
of social comparison theory.
I need to find it so I can read
Yeah.
it. It is one of the ways people gain insight into their own competence is by comparing themselves to others.
Yeah, so that definitely ties into like internal, external locus of control, and then social modeling. It's probably like the child of all of those three things. But that's neat. I'll have to look at that. Does everybody get this? I'm just curious. Like, does everybody like it, kind of? Is it okay? Cool. Does anyone have any like questions about it? Would it be helpful to see it in like a really, yeah, let's go ahead. For some reason I can't see names. I think it's my computer thing. I see Tony and Adam, right? The black beanie.
Mike.
Mike.
Zach, how does this relate to how you go forward with your attempt at RMT? What has this changed in your perception of delivering information? What are your strategic moves for your ride, for your actual ride day? What are your strengths and weaknesses that come out of this?
It's a really good question. So the one thing, and I wanted to finish on this, but it's a really good time to bring it up now. The biggest thing here that I've learned from studying all this stuff is there's so much value in identifying the issue and giving it a quantitative measurement. So if you can objectively remove your own self-esteem from something and your negative emotions from something and just focus on the task at hand, it makes it, like for me, I lean toward the logical mathematical realm of thinking, and everything in my head kind of works as a formula. So if I can remove certain variables and focus on other certain variables in order to improve my own success, and I can see how those things relate to each other, like it gives me a lot more sense of control over the situation. So moving forward into that for the RMT and specifically the ride day, like when I've been practicing like my change ups and other stuff, I've been looking at every single variable that can affect it, whether it was my warm up, whether it's the feature that I'm practicing on, whether it's the light conditions for the day, what I can manipulate to give myself a better chance for success, and then go from there. And I don't know if I was really doing that beforehand as naturally before studying this. So in that sense, that's how it's helped. Any more questions?
I think Claire had her hand up.
Claire, please.
can you guys hear me?
Yes, no, I can.
Okay, perfect. I guess all I wanted to say, first off, it's really crazy to see a flow chart of everything I've felt over the last like 9 years of being an instructor. So thank you for that. I think that's really awesome. And going through the certification process as well, like there's people that I've done the certification process with, that I've seen them in these phases. I've seen myself in these phases, not only in snowboarding, but also like running my own nonprofit and everything else, like even to like this, I don't know, like cooking. Like I feel the same thing with this too, like everything in there. It's awesome really to see it kind of really mapped out. So thanks, Zach. Awesome.
I appreciate that.
I guess the only thing, like the thing that I just wanted to say, it's just so cool to see kind of like how the positive and negatives in each of those, like the locus of control, like there's external, there's internal, the neuroticism, how you can have some like, I don't know, some weird reactions to stress negatively, definitely, but how like the self-esteem can go up, it can go down. But also like the post-event part, like there can be really positive, like I know you're saying kind of how you like to take the emotion out of it and kind of like have a formula for it. And identifying those emotions is super key, and kind of like identifying them, being like, hey, I'm feeling this, but I'm going to move on to this next part, take out that emotion and go through the process of what's in my control and what's out of my control. I don't really know where I was going with this. I totally lost my train of thought. Anyways, I just wanted to say that I think it's really cool to see it all mapped out. And I've done a lot of work, like personally myself, with kind of identifying emotions that I have when I'm on the mountain, because I'm super in that like states of physiology most of the time when I'm riding. And I think that's really cool to see it like that. Yeah, I don't know what I had to say. I just wanted to say it was awesome. Thank you.
Cool. Anything else before I wrap up? I don't want to keep anybody too long. Yeah, go ahead.
Lynn has her hand up.
So what about, where do you think we are to the extent when we overestimate that our ability is typical of others, when in fact it's actually atypical? For example, if we're actually way better at something than we thought.
So you mean like if we, I guess that would be, that's really interesting.
So like, for example, when I went for the RMT exam in 2018, I presented a clinic. I was like, yeah, whatever, this is okay. Everybody's is probably gonna be pretty similar to mine, but it was a really good clinic. But I didn't really like process that in my head. I knew like it'd be okay. I knew I'd probably pass it, the clinic part. But I didn't, and it wasn't like low self-efficacy. I was pretty confident I'd pass that clinic, but I didn't realize that it was really good. I thought it was just like average.
Okay.
Where does that fit?
So I would put that directly into self-esteem, because that's your confidence in your own abilities. So depending on how confident you are, and whether you like to, if you have a tendency to kind of lower your own expectations for what you give and how people receive it, then that would tend toward like middle to lower self-esteem. And that would, like, you use the word, I'm pretty sure you used the word, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you said I would probably pass it instead of I would definitely pass it.
Well, nothing's guaranteed.
Exactly. But like there are people that go into lots of exams and they say, I'm gonna kill this thing, man, I'm gonna destroy it. Like that's high self-esteem. And what you reminded me, and I did want to talk about this or just mention it for a little bit, self-efficacy can definitely be false. So you can have a false sense of self-efficacy. You can have a false belief in your ability to do something. And like you see that a lot with Jerry's in the park. Like, yeah, I can send a backflip. Like, okay. Like, I don't know how to respond to that. You definitely can't, but like, I'm not going to say that. Go for it, bro. Like that kind of stuff. So when you have like a false sense of self-efficacy, whether it's the belief that you will pass or won't pass something, I think it's still related back to like the person's self-esteem in your example. maybe positive emotions, they're really feeling it, or it's just a perfect bluebird pow day. So locus of control. And I think it all kind of feeds back into that, no matter what the example is. Yeah, Tony?
Nice.
Yeah. First of all, yeah, I remember that clinic, Lynn. That was an amazing clinic, and I remember just trying to hold my excitement back, trying to keep my game face on. But it's interesting you say that, because you see people coming through exams and doing a lot of that, and I think people, you know, sometimes when they train for exams, they train for like the standard. Obviously, you're going against the standard, right? And the standard is, you're above the standard or below the standard, but they don't all necessarily always train to see how far above the standard, or, you know, where they are below that standard. And I think in your case there, you train to go above it, but you're super determined. You're really smart. You're well-trained, and you're well prepared. And I think that's the key, is the prepared. And the fact that you prepared so much to pass it, that your preparation took you well above it. So maybe that's just your awareness of the different levels of, you know, that's that part that's above the standard. What are those different areas where they're above? And maybe it's just that assessment. So, you know, like any examiner, like you see a new examiner come on the team, and they tend to use those middle numbers all the time, 3, 4, 3, 4, 3, 4. And we always tell examiners, use the full scale, 1 through 6. And it's not until you understand how to assess and how to assess something to the standard to be able to use that full scale. So I appreciate to what you're saying there. And yeah, I remember that clinic. That was awesome.
Thanks.
Can I just add something to that as well? Just like leading clinics in general, I've had a couple conversations with like Metzler and the boys about, sometimes we come out of a clinic and either we feel like, man, we nailed it, but then we get no response from the group, and it's really hard to kind of get an idea of whether it hit home or not. So maybe weeks down the line, somebody actually gives you a props on something, saying, hey, I remember that clinic from a year ago and it was amazing. So to have Tony be able to recall that and say it made an impact, it definitely, your point wasn't to make the impact. Your point was just to get the message across, and then it made an impact on him. So I think sometimes we are there to kind of deliver the content, and sometimes to maybe get a response, kind of like tells us whether we hit our mark, or not to get a response. We should still know that we hit our mark at the end of the day.
We got Chris Hargraves with his hand up again.
Go for it, Chris.
I'm learning the rules of this hand raising thing, trying to do it right. I was just going to mention that to Lynn's comment that, you know, a lot of times in like the exam environment and in maybe in a presentation with your peers, it's hard to recognize how well you've done, because the relationship, the strength of the relationship that you have in that moment with the group it's just not, it's not clear, right? And you know, the more I travel around, the more I've done exams, you know, I don't know, over the last like 25 years or something, the ones where I've always known that I've done well are the ones where I've taken the time to truly connect with the people in the group, and I get a really strong assessment and understanding from them of what they took away from it, what was impactful to them, you know, how I affected them. And it's definitely given me a much better sense of, you know, whether or not I'm good enough or doing a good job in the moment, just based on their response to it, and taking the time. It's funny. I always tell people in exams that they, you know, exam candidates never give themselves enough time to perform movement analysis and give feedback. They just never do it. Except for, you know, the ones who fail. Sorry, I should clarify. The ones who fail just don't give themselves enough time to perform MA, give lots of feedback, get in process with their students. And most of them don't give themselves enough time to reconnect through their wrap up, where they actually take the time to get that individual feedback and get that strong sense of success and accomplishment, you know, in the experience. And I've certainly felt the same way Lynn has, in that, you know, I'll give a clinic and go, I think it was good, but it's hard to, like, you know, national team tryout. You're doing a clinic at national team trial, like you walk away going, yeah, I nailed it, but you don't know, like you have no idea what your evaluators actually think, because they try to stone face you and like, and make you feel like, you know, you're you just like, maybe you did good. In fact, they'll even do it worse. Like Lane, the last national team tryout I went to, Lane's like, how do you think you did? I'm like, screw you, man. Tell me how you think I did. Like, I want to know what you think. Don't treat me like I'm some guy. Like, so it's like, I think that's really a huge thing. It's just, there are these environments that we create where we don't give ourselves the ability, or even give our candidates, our participants, the ability to really feel that they've succeeded. And certainly, I think back to that self-esteem piece in your model, Zach, and I just keep going. I keep reflecting on it, going, okay, well, how much responsibility should fall on the hands of the person giving the clinic or the examiner creating that environment? And I know it's different in Rocky versus West and Northwest and East and whatnot. I've seen most of the exam processes and how a lot of examiners give it, but I think the environment is just so not conducive to really support the self-esteem of others, and they're left to really question themselves and go, have I done it? Did I do okay? Was I okay? And it's almost like we condition our members, the people that we train in those environments and the people that we examine to really question their abilities. And then if they pass, even though they don't really know why they passed, they're stoked that they passed, but they're like, whoa, I passed? That's crazy. Like, that's great, I passed, but how? and the people who fail are left going, oh, I guess I really do suck. I came in here, I thought I sucked, and now I know that I suck. And it's like, holy smokes, man, we just, that environment is not very conducive to supporting the self-esteem of others. And I question that across the board. And I know there are probably some people in here who are on those committees that are developing exam standards and things like that, but we really got to do a better job of the humanistic side of it. And by the way, that argument has been around for like ever. The first examiners college I went to in Colorado, I don't know, it's like 2000 or something, 2003, something like that, for snowboarding. That conversation came up and everybody agreed, yeah, it's really important. And then we didn't really do anything about it. So I'm not going to say it hasn't gotten better. What I will say is that I've seen examiners across the board become much more skilled at it and working it into their process. But yeah, we've got to do a better job of making sure that Lynn knows that when she delivers a clinic that she freaking nailed it, and that we're proud of her, and that she should be proud of herself. Sorry, I'm just using you as an example, Lynn. I don't mean to call you out or anything. But, I thank you again for bringing that up. It's a really cool topic. I will keep going on and on and on. I'm going to shut up now. Back to you, Zach.
Okay. So if you guys want to keep on talking about this for 5 hours, I'm totally down. But I imagine not everybody wants to do that. Is there anybody else that wants to add anything before we kind of debrief? Yeah,
Cody's got his hand up. We haven't heard from him yet.
Yeah, go for it.
Hey guys, so one thing that I've been kind of thinking about while we were kind of talking about this is I used to work at Men's Warehouse, and something that we would do pretty frequently is go over how our sales went individually, with our manager, to where our manager would just sit there, watch our sale, and he would go over every single thing that we did, and he would ask us on a scale of 1 to 10, how do you think it went? And I think that as a trainer or someone who's trying to train someone for an exam to do some of these tasks, and just straight up say, hey, on a scale of 1 to 6, for example, since that's our kind of grading scale, where do you think that would lay on, the particular task that we were doing? And really being able to have them kind of draw out a specific number that they had, and being able to say, okay, sweet, if you think that you gave yourself a 3 on that, clearly you did something well because you didn't give yourself a 1. What do you think you did well on that? And that can really kind of help in the self-esteem part, in terms of being hey, I did part of the task, but I think that I could have done better on this. And and if you are on a 3, be okay, so what do you think you could have done better to get from a 3 to a 4, or even improve that to 6, and start having people become really self-aware and self-actualized on a lot of the stuff that they're doing can be really important in any of the training processes that we have. And that can be done even outside of an exam process, anytime that we're in any kind of lesson or anything like that. I think that we can sit there and be hey, you went for this 360. How do you think it went? On a scale of 1 to 10, do you think that was the best 360 you've ever done? Or do you think that we can improve? And if you can start to have them draw out some of the things that they did right and wrong, and it could be, when it comes to that locus thing, the exterior locus, where it's the jump wasn't built up the exact way that I'm used to. that's something where it's like, okay, well, let's see if we can figure out how we can overcome that obstacle, even though it's not something that you have control over. How can we overcome that obstacle and then maybe get to closer to its end? So I think when it comes to, this whole self-efficacy and like all the things that kind of come with it, being able to coach people through by having them kind of become self-actualized and self-aware can be super important. And I think that as an instructor or coach, I think it's our job to help get them to that point.
Yeah, 100%. Does anybody want to add on that? I don't see any hands.
We got Lynn.
Lynn, go for it.
So building on Cody's point, so if we improve their metacognitive abilities, then theoretically we remove all external obstacles, and it should allow them to be able to basically coach themselves. Those things that we ask, like, how do you think you did? Some people have no idea. We need to build the base or something to build metacognition. Cody, how have you used that to help the people you coach or the athletes you coach begin to build metacognition?
So anytime that they're like trying to do like a task and they sit there and be like, oh, I'm not getting this at all, I'm getting really frustrated, like this isn't happening, I try and break down a lot of the steps that we're kind of looking for. So for example, like if there's a student who's trying to learn how to do like a board slide for the first time, and like they feel like they're not getting anywhere close to it, sit there and be like, okay, well, let's break down each individual step and see if you were able to be like successful at each individual step that we need to be a board slide. So were you able to get onto the feature going completely straight? Cool. So we know that we don't have, a complete failure on this. What is the next step that we need to do to get our board slide? Okay, we need to have that upper and lower body separation. Do you have some of that? Or is it not quite to that extent that we want? Okay, so we're kind of at 45 degrees, might not be fully separated. So that might be something that we need to work on. What after that did we have? Do we have a flat board? Sweet, your board was flat the entire time. That means that we were successful with that. Trying to break down every single aspect of it and be like, hey, this is where we were successful and this is where we weren't. So don't sit there and be like, oh, that was a complete failure, I'm nowhere close to where I'm doing it. Being able to sit there and analyze every single thing and be able to show them why they weren't completely unsuccessful at it and what we can do to be successful at it.
So are they able to apply it then to something else? For example, like a 360 over a jump, or do you still need to help them? Like I'm looking to learn how to help them do that by themselves. They can start to become aware of themselves and coach themselves.
So I think that when we start to get to like a higher level, we can absolutely use this to bring it to something else where it's like, once we start doing a 360 on a jump right away, they should be able to start to say, hey, this is what I think went wrong. And if they are aware of everything that, they need to have that 360 on a jump, without you even asking, like, how do you think it went? They should start to be able to get to that point where it's like, hey, I think that I did this incorrectly. And especially when we start seeing like those higher level people who have a little bit more of that self-awareness and that self-actualization, I think you'll start to see a lot more of that whole, like, I didn't do this when I was doing this particular task. I didn't have my legs retracted when I was in the air, and that made it to where I wasn't able to fully get the grab. And a lot of the times, especially in students that like I'm kind of working with on a regular basis, they start to get to that point where it's like, oh yeah, I definitely need to do this. And like, I don't even need to give them feedback. So as long as they start to just do it constantly, where you're starting to ask them, hey, like, what do you think went wrong? And especially if you have like video evidence of it, where it's like, hey, let's go back and look at what you did and make sure that what you think you did wrong is actually the thing you did wrong or what you can improve on.
Cool, thanks.
Sweet. We got Conrad, you got last piece, and I think we're going to probably try and wrap this up with one or two more people soon.
Sweet.
Yeah, I just wanted to just talk a little bit about self-esteem and how you talked to it for a second, Zach, about how some people can get their abilities caught up in, especially when it's something you do for your job, it's how well you can perform that task is then how you view yourself, and it's your own self-worth and your self-respect. And you can subvert that by separating the two, because you as a person are much different than just you as a snowboarder, right? Like there's two separate entities going on there. And so melding those two is great for like the culture of it and stuff, but it can be detrimental, especially if you're having unsuccessful attempts at an exam or at a certain task or whatever in that activity. By separating those two things, can bring perspective, or even going to like presenting an exam scenario, or leading a training clinic. You are not the thing that you're doing. You are something different entirely. So having those two things separated there can allow some people to not then go into the neuroticism, if I'm saying that right. Going into their mind and going over it all the time, and can allow them then to maybe move into more of a locus of control and analyzing where they could have changed something.
Yep. I that's exactly what I wanted to finish on too. So if people are wrapping up, I'm going to do that. Going back to self-esteem. So it's important to separate, of course, and understand like where your self-esteem comes from. I want you guys to think about the last time you saw a really cute dog, like super cute dog, waggling its tail, like just awesome dog. Cool. One of the first things I think of anyways, when I see a super cute dog, or I see my dog when I get home, is like, oh, what a good dog. No, what is the dog doing? It's existing. That's all it's doing. The dog is being a dog. And the dog is good just because it exists. And I think that humans, we kind of need to be we need to realize the same thing. Us existing intrinsically gives us worth. The fact that we exist, and you can get philosophical or religious on this, like it means that you are capable of doing things and you have self-worth. I wrote down a little example here under self-esteem. It's our ability to value ourselves. As instructors, we have a tendency to attach our writing, request hours, exam success, etc., with our intrinsic work. Separating the fact that we have intrinsic worth because we are human beings and we exist is the first step. And I think that a lot of people in this industry have issues with that. And like, not to get too morbid, but just looking at not between instructors, but just ski resort workers in general, there's really high suicide rates like that we deal with, and lots of self-esteem issues and lots of weird stuff in this industry between seasonal work and not making a lot of money your first few years doing this, and etc. Like, people need to be reminded all the time, just because you mess up a task, like, you're still a person, like, you have worth. So I really appreciate you bringing that up, Conrad, because I do think that's probably one of the most important steps to see success and positivity and other stuff, is your ability to realize that you are important just because you exist. So thank you for that. Cool.
Thank you, Zach, for presenting, and thanks, Jake, for presenting earlier as well, man. Both you guys, you got our mental wheels and our hamsters running through those things for sure. I've definitely got a few things to take home with me, and man, there's a few things I'm going to nerd out on as well. Thanks everybody for coming out, staying in for this is more like it. This has been super duper awesome. I know Lynn is probably already trying to figure out when exactly the next one's going to be and who is going to present. So if you've had some ideas that you want to throw out there, whether it's just a couple of minutes or you have a full big piece prepared, shout at Lynn and we'll try and find some opportunities to engage you and your ideas with this group of people. And I want to take a second to say thank you again to every single person who kind of tuned into this. We've got some great interactions with a lot of trainers from all over the place, and this is freaking awesome. This is also the most human contact I have at any given point at this point, so thank you guys for that as well.